So the fourth portion will particularly focus on what happened in the Sunflower Movement. So as I said, Wild Lily Movement was the last major episode of student activism. But what happened after, so in Taiwan was that in year 2000, we have a first major power turnover. The DPP become the ruling party, and after 8 years, the nationalists, the Kuomintang, become the ruling party under the leadership of Ma Ying-jeou. So from year 2008 to 2016, that is the time of the Kuomintang government. And in this period, we see a lot of social protests re-emerge. Civil society become agitated again. But what happened is so different from what we saw last century because of a number of factors that come in together. Number one is that we saw the rise of social media. So this is also in congruence with what happened in different parts of the world, that we saw the rise of digitally enabled activism. And also because of the neoliberal globalization that was also felt in Taiwan, and also in Taiwan we have an expansion of higher education in the 90s. So more and more young people can get into the college, but after they graduate, they cannot find suitable jobs. So a lot of economic discontent for the young people. And the third factor has to do with the rise of China. So during the transition from Taiwan's martial law era to democracy, we really don't have to care about China. But with the rise of Chinese military economic power, now Chinese government has been increasingly capable of intervening what happened in Taiwan. So they are really concerned here about its detrimental effect to Taiwan's young democracy. So we see that more and more social protests, especially those involved with young people, had to do with the Chinese intervention or soft power campaign. So number one issue is 2008 Wild Strawberry Movement. And that has to do with the visit of the PRC representative. And because in order to host this historical visit, the government at that time implemented very strict policing. So many people are not happy, and they thought this is a regression of the human rights. So students have a protest that lasted for several months. It was so-called Wild Strawberry. And so Wild Strawberry Movement make a comeback of student activism on national political issues. And in 2012, there's another media-related movement. It's called Anti-Media Monopoly Movement. And originally it was not led by students, but somehow students become its protagonists and the leaders. And that has to do with pro-Beijing media tycoon. The tycoon tried to expand its media control, and a lot of what the tycoon said really went contrary to what we feel comfortable. For example, the chairman just said that there was no death during the Tiananmen, and that really went against the report at the time. So there was concern that the media was acting on the behaviors of Beijing. So there's a plot trying to monopolize Taiwan's media outlet, and the student rose up against that. So we look at these young people, of course, they represent a new cohort, new generation. In the Western discourse, we might refer them as millennials, meaning that they were born around the period of the change of the century. But in Taiwan, the millennial was not really a popular term. But if you look at this generation, I think they share something together. Like as I said, there are economic grievances for these young people. They tend to be more educated, but they were facing diminishing economic opportunities. And also, because of the further integration of Taiwan's economy and Chinese economy, so a lot of assembly manufacturers have been relocated to mainland China. So we see that actually the economic growth rate was lower in the newer century, and which resulted in higher younger people unemployment. And if you look at especially the younger people, there's actually a wage stagnation for 15 years, meaning that in real terms, that the income in Taiwan does not grow. But at the same time, we know with the speculative boom in housing market. So people feel that they were not able, become increasingly unable to lead a decent life. So in the past, in the last century, in Taiwan, we have the so-called transition from factory hand to boss phenomenon, meaning a lot of people, they began with working in a factory and they become entrepreneur after they learn certain skill. So we have small and medium enterprises throughout Taiwan, and the founder typically are not well educated, but they were diligent and they catch the economic opportunity and become boss. So that become a kind of Taiwan's economic myth that a lot of self-made people made themselves in that process. But looking forward, moving forward to this century, we know that this phenomenon was no longer there. And there was a book actually published in 2011 called The Bomb Generation, because the book actually is quite popular and argued that the younger people facing increasing poverty, declining fertility rate, and also more precarities. So these young people feel they've been left out, and they no longer were able to share the economic prospect as their parents do. So let me come to what happened in the Sunflower Movement. So that really has to do with economic integration with China. Now, how to manage cross-strait relations have been very controversial. So during the DPP government, it was more conservative in that respect, but the DPP suffered electoral setback out of that. And during the KMT government, one of the chief agenda of Ma Ying-jeou administration was to further the economic collaboration with mainland China. So one of the centerpiece was the so-called Cross-Strait Service Trade Agreement. That was signed in 2013. But prior to that, there was minimum public consultation. So the Taiwanese people didn't know the existence of this, and it was announced just a few days before the formal signing. And what the public, general Taiwanese people, were kind of shocked by the extent of the opening, because many service trade, for example, profession like family-run beautician shops, hair salon, will be open for Chinese investment. And once the Chinese investment is approved, the boss can bring up to 3 people to move to Taiwan and have the permanent PR, permanent residency, and they can enjoy the national health insurance. So many people care about that they were losing job opportunity and working opportunity to the incoming Chinese population. So a lot of discussion, and so there were opposition coming from the NGO. The name was Democratic Front Against Cross-Strait Trade in Service Agreement. And also there was student organization also happened in that time. So a lot of discussion, a lot of public hearings. But what happened is that the administration headed by Ma Ying-jeou was become impatient with the slow speed. So what happened on March 17, 2014 was that lawmakers make a surprise attack. They just railroad this bill when it was still under the review of the lawmaker legislature. They declared it being passed. So this is really a triggering event. And what happened is that the students just stormed the legislature building, and unexpectedly they were there. They were able to withstand the police effort to evacuate them. And it took place in the evening hours. But very quickly, supporters throughout Taiwan came to the area to support them. So just on the second day morning, so you see tens of thousands of people gather outside of the legislature. So the government cannot do anything, because you will have to face the consequences if you want to use force. And also at that time, you see the split among the ruling party. So many lawmakers, especially the speakers, Wang Jinping at that time, was not see eye to eye with the President Ma Ying-jeou at that time. So it resulted in a stalemate. So it's one of the students use. I think I would say it's the most radical tactics in the history of Taiwan's social movement. They really occupy the legislature and prevent lawmakers from carry out their duties. So, and what happened is that move on to the third week. Of course, it's just like what happened elsewhere. This Occupy protest cannot last forever, but the students just grab an opportunity because at that time the legislature UN speaker partly agree what the students were advocating for. That because there was no law regulating the cross-strait relationship, so the students want to have a special law enact first, then to process this free trade agreement. And the legislative speaker agree on that demand. And then students declare that they have won and convince other comrades to withdraw. So it ended in a peaceful way with zero casualties. But the political consequence was so great because the ruling party was in such an embarrassment. So it suffered back-to-back electoral defeats in 2014. That was a local election. And also 2016, there was a general election involving both the presidential and the legislative election. So there's a generation roots for that. Many of the participants were what we call in Taiwan's way the so-called seventh graders, because they were born in the 70s according to the Republic of China calendars. So that meaning that they were born between 1981 to 1990. So, and also there are several surveys of participants, and one of the surveys indicated that people who were present at the scene, you look at the profile, it really you can see that it's a borderly based youth movement rather than student movement. So like around 3/4 of them were below 30s, and only 56.6% of them were students. So meaning that a lot of young workers, even though they were no longer students, were there after they finished their work. And also more than 84% of the participant has a university diploma or above. So that gives you the idea of the main participants. So the aftermath is of course tremendous, because one of the most important factor was that it was perceived as successful. So Hong Kong's umbrella movement, as I mentioned earlier, taking place 6 months later, were partly inspired by what happened in Taiwan. And also within Taiwan, there are new protests being encouraged out of that. There was an anti-nuclear protest happening just several weeks after that. And the result was to force the government to stop the fourth nuclear power plant. And that had been in controversy for actually more than 2 decades. And you can imagine a situation that a pro-nuclear government has to stop a nuclear project out of the emergence of a nationwide protest wave. And also next year, you have high school student protests against the curriculum reform. And that also forced the government to back from the measure that it originally intended to implement. And also politic-wise, we see also the impacts that a lot of participants then turn out to election. So it's quite interesting because they were occupied legislature, and a few years later they just run for the legislature in electoral ways. So you see, like in the general election in 2016, you see new entrants in the political scene that explicitly carry out the Sunflower Movement's spirits. Like we have a new form party at that time, the so-called New Power Party. It got 5 seats out of 113. And it also managed to stay there in the next round election in 2020. And so in 2016, actually it emerged as the 3rd largest party in the legislature, just after DPP and after KMT. So you see the tremendous reshaping of the political landscape out of that. There's another party, Taiwan State Building Party, also used to occupy one seat in 2020. So these are the most visible political consequence out of that political earthquake. And also that not only in the general election, also a lot of them actually participate in municipal election. So just give you an idea, in 2018, like out of my analysis, I can count 93 movement party candidates. So a lot of different movement party, not just as Taiwan State Building Party, not just New Power Party, but altogether you can have like nationwide 93 candidates join that election, and out of them 20 were elected. And in Taiwan we have like 900 plus local councillors. So although out of these total number, 20 are not that, it's not that much, but I think they represent something new. And also I think less in the public attention was the fact that a lot of ex-activists joined the government, the DPP government that was formed in 2016. So they become like aides, secretary, staff in different parts of the government structure. So these young people really had a hand-on political experience out of the power turnover. So they were like mature very quickly in a very short span of time.